Okay. So it seems like Mishpatim has a law or a rule or an instruction for most everything, at least everything the Israelites needed as they began their journey toward becoming a community. So there was a lot from which artists could pick to illustrate and illuminate the Parsha. From Canadian Sheila Nempton, this is Mishpatim in her Tablet Tableau series, 54 pieces, one for each Parsha, in a comic book style. She surrounds elements from the text with some of the underlying themes to offer, as she puts it, a source of education, enjoyment, and above all, inspiration. The various laws and commandments for personal, family, and business relationships that begin the Parsha are arrayed sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. The next panel has Moses getting the people to swear they will follow the rules and regulations. And then, as the people gather at the foot of Sinai, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel ascend for a heavenly luncheon with God, after which Moses goes on alone to spend 40 days atop the smoke and fire-shrouded mountain. But let me go back to that middle panel. Are people confused? We will do and we will hear. Isn't that backwards? No.
Except it's even more backwards than you think, because the way she spells Venishma is not correct. Because Nishma comes from the word to hear, and it's missing the letter Ain, which puts it in that root. And she uses a different root, and I don't know if it's a mistake or on purpose, but she uses a root for soul, Nishama. So it doesn't, it says Naaseh v'Nishama. So I don't know. I was curious to see if you had something to say about that, or if it is just a typo.
I'm just wondering if it's a typo or if there's a midrash for that. So maybe we'll find out.
No, it is in that order.
No, but the spelling, that is not
I know about the spelling.
The Hebrew spelling, yeah.
I see it too.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's one of the two main points of discussion today is the Naaseh v'Nishma part. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, staying with the comic book style, but maybe a bit cheekier, the outrageous The Comic Torah, reimagining the very good book by Chicago-based illustrator Sharon Rosenzweig and comedian Aaron Freeman. They give us God as a green-skinned woman from another world. Their Moses is modeled on Barack Obama, and the land, a.k.a. Honey Milkand, is a voluptuous temptress. Here's how Rosenzweig and Freeman have them assembling all of those Mishpatim rules, starting, as the Parsha does, with the thorny issue of slavery. And that leads into a key passage that recurs throughout the Torah. You shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers. This is from another regular contributor to these art studies, friend and relative of KBS, Carmi Plout, who created this original a few years ago. The Chicago-based designer and computer artist uses the Torah scroll as a frame and shows the gathered people receiving the message via Moses. New York-born Anita Rabinoff-Goldman highlights that same passage, adding to it in the land of Egypt as it appears in the Parsha. Quilting is her medium, framing the words with pattern, color, and texture. She explains, quilts are my canvas, fabrics my paint. While visual imagery may be transferable between media, the added tactile dimension of the quilt, along with the emotional dimension that fabric adds to our lives, make it a potent creative force. Now making her home in the Boston area, Anita Goldman calls her Seeing Torah collection, 54 original quilts, a visual midrash, inviting the viewers to experience Torah visually and discover how the most central Jewish text can be relevant in our 21st century lives. German-born Gabriel Wolf brings a modern twist to the classical calligraphy style that he studied while growing up in Jerusalem for this take on Ki Gerim Hayitem Be'eretz Mitzrayim, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Wolf, who also lived in Amsterdam and Buenos Aires before resettling in his native Berlin, calls it one of the central moral imperatives in the Torah. He explains he took the words from singer-songwriter Daniel Kahn, freedom is a verb, something never finished, never done, something you must make, something you must take. It's something you must constantly become. And, as he puts it, decoded the idea into calligraphy, with the Hebrew letters calling upon us to take responsibility to prevent a similar situation from happening to others. From the Women of the Book project of Parsha paintings by 54 Jewish women artists from around the world, Mishpatim is by Argentina-born Lydia Rozansky, who emigrated to Israel in 2001. Her piece combines etchings, fabric, and needlework. As she explains, the feminine traditions of weaving and embroidery not only indicate obedience to the duties imposed by traditional gender roles, but they attempt to transcend obedience within limits, wherein women can do what they want while fulfilling their obligation. The feminine presence resides between the threads. The words of the Parsha are the strands of a spider web. At its center, the scales of justice, balanced by the tablets of the law. And also with a somewhat macabre and gaunt style, she presents other elements from the Parsha, including another often quoted passage, an eye for an eye, with a variety of cultural images. From her native Argentina to the U.S. to Israel, Lydia Rozansky says the tradition of embroidery becomes a memorial prayer for each culture, each community, each myth. The prayer meant to recover creativity locked up for centuries in the domestic sphere and to dissolve the boundaries between art and practical activities. For another take on that troublesome passage that I know we'll be talking about, this pop surreal image is by contemporary Scottish artist Michael Forbes, about whom comedian Ricky Gervais said, "He may be a little bit mental, but in a good way." His paintings have been described as a visual record of his thoughts and dreams, a magical, playful, dreamlike world laced with humor and pop culture. And here's a slightly less grim representation from mysterious British street artist Banksy, showing the renowned peace activist Mahatma Gandhi and using his famous quote, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." The laundry list of laws and rules starts out, as this art segment did, with how to treat slaves. And Canadian artist and liturgist Leah Crust uses an early 20th century image to make the point in Mishpatim, in the Mishpatim entry, from her illuminations and exploration of Haftarah through art and history. The Haftarah that traditionally is read along with the Parsha is from Jeremiah, recounting how the king told Jews to free their slaves after 7 years, as ordered in the Torah, which they did, but then re-enslaved them 2 years later, facing punishment from God for the transgression. Leah Crust writes, "Slavery has never disappeared and is manifested in the sex trade, children forced to be soldiers, and child labor." The background of the image recalls a signal event from 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, a deadly tragedy that led to laws protecting workers from dangerous and inhumane conditions. She based the foreground on a newspaper photo of the 1909 New York Labor Day Parade, with sweatshop workers carrying banners in English and Yiddish demanding abolish child slavery. That's from Leah Crust, and that is art for Mishpatim.
Well, thank you.
Very nice.
That was great.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So much food for thought.
Every week you up the game. I was looking at that Argentinian woman. Talk about cross cultural. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. I'm sorry. Because some of those images made me think of some of the stuff you see about Day of the Dead, from the South America. So I just love this mishmash when people use everything at their disposal in such a way. Thank you, Ellen.
Well, thank you. I think that's one of the wonderful things about that that Women of the Book. It's womenofthebook.org if you want to look at it. And all 54 are up there, and each of them represents the culture of the artist. They made an attempt to seek out artists from around the world who have a Jewish heritage, but also have a sense of the culture in the country that they come from or where they've grown up, and it's really. I think a wonderful project. I know it had been cycled around to various museums, and I don't know if they're still doing that or not, because that kind of got held up after COVID shut things down.
This is Heather. Just at FYI, I just got a message on Messenger for KBS from Marilyn, unable to get in, so I just sent her.
Did you send it, or I'm sending it right now?
I just sent it to her too, so hopefully
Oh.
she could get on.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Mishaberach, we have so many. Mm,
Would it be appropriate to include you and Yehuda about to begin travels?
we're not sick, but
Not sick, okay.
yeah, there is a prayer for traveling. Tfilat Haderech. I'll pull that up maybe in a minute. But yeah, sure. I mean, we all, we just went to this 2-day thing, and the first thing in my mind every day was, we have enough time to get sick and get well before our trip. Like, I just assume if I'm around a lot of people, I'm going to get sick. So yeah,
Don't
let's
negate
start
the
with.
power of positive thinking. Don't set yourself up to get sick either.
Okay, let's start by looking in the screen. Sarah, Mishaberach, for you.
Thank you.
Marilyn, who's trying to join, we'll have to say her name again when she actually makes it. In our community, Stuart, Jan, Mike, who else? Sherry and Alice. Arnie, go ahead.
I needed one. I had bad Thai food last night.
Ooh. I thought that the term bad and Thai food don't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah, I didn't try to tie one on, but
Ooh.
it's just the opposite. I'm not tied up, okay?
Okay. TMI. Okay.
I would add Lou Harris, who is still recovering from the flu, but just celebrated his 80th birthday this past week. So
Oh,
he's.
so Mazal Tov Ana Mishaberach.
Mhm.
My cousin Carol. Our
My friend Grace Lucretia Maki.
My friend Dan Lovett.
Okay, I'll add mine and then I'll go. As always, my sister Chaya, struggling with chronic brain injury issues. Gina
I guess I'd like to
Abercrombie.
add, before you start, I'd like to add Daniel Lev. I just happened to communicate with him this week.
Well, I don't have my hearing aids. The battery went out, and my uncle, who was very dear to me, was named Daniel Leb, L-E-B. But they're probably it was a nice memory. And then my friend Peggy, who's having knee trouble, and the whole world, Mother Nature, etc., etc.
Pete Bissell.
Huh?
Pete Bissell.
Okay. Going once, going twice, going 3 times.
Did we mention Marilyn? We did. Okay.
Is she here yet? Anyway, she
Ross
can add on
Brown?
later.
I know we were gonna. Are you there, Marilyn?
Well, if she wants to add somebody, we can do it later. Misha Tenu Makor HaBracha Tenu ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berachim Otenu Makor HaBracha Otenu As thirsty of breathing with Shlema, the renewed
Patty,
body, the
I can't
renewed
speak for very long. It's, I'm
spirit,
studying this.
and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We can unmute and have a wonderful cacophony. Oh, thank you. That's it. This is the Debbie Friedman interpretation. I'm not going to sing it, but whose Bar Bat Mitzvah did we sing it for? Maybe Ridley's? I can't remember. One of them, then I learned this version, which is very beautiful. May we be blessed as we go on our way. May we be guided in peace. May we be blessed with health and joy. May we be sheltered by the wings of peace. May we be kept in safety and in love. May grace and compassion find their way to every soul. May this be our blessing. Amen. It's a beautiful song. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Olam,
asher
asher
Kiddushanu,
kitshanu,
tzvatav
tvatav zivanim,
Kitzivanu,
asok
Lasso,
b'divrei
Divrei Torah.
Torah.
Marilyn's coming.
All right. So this parasha is very toothy, disturbing, and heavy, but it is worth reading just the first sentence for a minute, and I will read it. And these are the laws that you shall set before them. And stop right there for a minute. Let's just remember that in Parashat Yitro, we read the 10 overlying principles, I'm going to call them. Sort of generalities from which you can actually extrapolate most of the rest of the laws that will be unfolding. So as an acknowledgement to that this parasha in and of itself has a lot of very disturbing minutiae, but it comes in a response to the idea of a generality that the people stood and said, we will do. Just we will do, which comes up twice in this parasha before the Na'aseh v'nishma. So as a counterbalance to the 10 relatively on the surface simple looking, yet depth beyond imagination. And now on the basis of that, I like to read the upcoming troublesome laws in that light. So there we go. So I read the first line. Now, maybe again, Heather, because you don't stay with us for the full thing, if you would like to read through, it's kind of a little toothy, but let's just do through 12:17 and take a stopping breath there.
And these are the laws that you shall set before them. Should you buy a Hebrew slave, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go free and with no payment. If he came by himself, then he shall go out by himself. If he was husband to a wife, his wife shall go out with him. If his master should give him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if the slave should solemnly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free, his master shall make him approach the gods, and make him approach the door and the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him perpetually. And should a man sell his daughter as a slave girl, she shall not go free as the male slaves go free. If she seem bad in the eyes of her master for whom she was intended, he shall let her be redeemed. To an outsider he shall have no power to sell her, since he has broken faith with her. And if for his son he intended her according to the practice of daughters, he shall do for her. If another woman he shall take for himself, he must not stint for this one her meals, her wardrobe, and her conjugal rights. If he does not do these 3 for her, she shall go free without payment, with no money. He who strikes a man and he dies is doomed to die. And he who did not plot it, but God made it befall him, I shall set apart for you a place for which he may flee. And should a man scheme against his fellow man to kill him by cunning, from my altar you shall take him to die. And he who strikes his father or his mother is doomed to die. And he who kidnaps a man and sells him, or he is bound in his hands, is doomed to die. And he who vilifies his father or his mother is doomed to die.
As good a stopping place as any. or not.
Fun
Go
stuff.
ahead, Yehuda. You have to unmute. You have to unmute.
You might note that in line 10, even though the things it's, it says if he marries another, he must not withhold from this one food, clothing, or conjugal rights. That is directly from Ketubot, the standard Ketubah. This line is actually in the Ketubah.
Right. And it's been interpreted in many ways, but the most, like the settled upon translation is conjugal rights in most translations. But can I go back and say why do we talk about the slave at the beginning of the set down actual laws right after the first revelation at Sinai?
It's got to be the question.
It must have been a big concern.
Well,
At the
where did
time.
they just come from? They just were slaves.
That's right. So it was a big concern how you treat slaves because they were slaves. So I would think that it would be of utmost importance to them, because Judaism is a set of laws of how to live and how to treat other people. And so you were strangers yourselves in a strange land. It would be really important how you treat somebody who works for you or who is paying off a debt to you or, whatever.
But why? So considering that the Jews had just left a situation where there was slavery, why is that the first law?
That's what
Because
I'm
why
saying.
not just not have slavery at all?
Well, that was part of the culture, and it was a way for people to pay off a debt, and maybe for someone who didn't have any means of a living themselves. Um, so it was there, part of the culture. So it had to be addressed. How do you treat this person? When do they get their freedom? When are they done paying off their debt to you? I mean, in a sense, Jacob worked for his father-in-law pretty much for nothing for a long time before he got his own flock. So he was sort of indentured himself in a way to Yitro, in my opinion.
So, yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
I want to hear. I have Matan, then Arnie, then Ruth Ellen, but let's keep all that in mind because what Sarah brought up, one of the concepts is actually a thread in here, which we'll read a couple more times. So Matan, go ahead.
I think that he started with slaves because slaves are so vulnerable. They have surrendered all their power to their master. And I believe that's why it's foremost.
Wonderful.
Arnie?
Is there a differentiation in Hebraic for slave and indentured servant?
That's a very good question because there's a lot of the debate has to do with the idea of slavery, chattel slavery. In America, when we say slavery, it means something very specific. It actually refers to the whole stealing people away from where they are in order to use them for your own gain, right? That's chattel slavery is very, very specific, and it comes with first and foremost an acknowledgement that some people are less human, and chattel slavery treats slaves as not human, and the Jewish word for slave never implies lack of humanity. That's the important concept here. That's the difference. When we use the term slavery in America, it comes with a whole lot of baggage, but that baggage doesn't in essence exist, and the laws reflect that they're still human, even if their condition led them to be in one way or another enslaved.
But is there a differentiation and is there a word in Hebrew, indentured servant, that could have been
Um,
used instead?
there is, but for the purpose of understanding, um, for the purpose, the term slaves, the way it's used to remind us of our history combined with our future, our history combined with our future, with the laws standing in the middle. In other words, you'll always be enslaved if you don't adhere to some laws, so your future will always form enslavement. There is no specific word for that. In legal terms, there are words for various people who you are responsible for, but slaves are the term slave, evid, is the overriding term. And I think in this parasha, we don't have a different word for it as far as I remember. I'll have to kind of scrutinize it a little bit more. So for the purpose of understanding the Israelites' relationship to slavery, it is evid, which is the root word for slave. Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
Just because Arnie brought that up and we talked about it, I have to thank you, Aviva, when I first started this, having a native Hebrew speaker like that, because I didn't even realize that distinction, the connotations. And now I get so upset on TV, like, I guess it throws in real fast, Alan will appreciate this. Bill Maher, he goes, look at the Bible. They said you could have slaves. See, they don't read, they don't look at the nuances of all that. So when I'm looking, and is it the word li'amah?
Tell me what line that you're looking at.
It said the daughter is a slave. We just Mishpatim.
Yeah.
Let's see, which number is it? I was trying to go backwards from the little Hebrew I know, and
Okay. I
Master
believe
give
it's the word ama.
Right.
Amah. So Amah,
Yeah.
what is that? What is the root of that? And you said Eched. What did you just say to Arnie was the root?
Evid.
Evid.
Right. So ama, in where we've seen it before, does not necessarily mean a lack of agency. So Hagar was the slave girl of Sarah. It doesn't
So it's
imply.
more akin to being a servant. It's more.
It can be both. It doesn't, it's not necessarily a legal status, but it does refer usually to a younger woman before the time in her life where she is legally something else. So it's a status before she is legally somebody's wife or something like that. So in and of itself, it doesn't necessarily imply slavery. It implies more a lack of agency due to age or customs of the time. It could also mean under the protection of, but it usually means slave.
Well, I had an enlightenment in a certain way. Now, this is what I really want to say. Because this was happened, supposedly 2 years and 3 months after they left Israel. So we're always talking about, why do we focus on slaves first? Because they were slaves in Egypt. But the fact of the matter is, here we're talking about the babes, not in the woods, but in the desert. They were children. They never had to deal with a society where they were free. They didn't know yet how to act as free people. So they have certain responsibilities with that, obviously. And these are what's being laid out right now. Now, why they started with ones about a wife and woman and all that, I think that's a pragmatic, practical thing out in the desert. I mean, we don't, we hear when Yitro told, I think part and parcel of all this is the stuff between the lines about the people coming to Moshe with all these problems. Well, here these people had more agency than they ever had. Were they fooling around with their neighbor's wife? Were they doing all these things? I mean, I think, not conjugal relations, but sexual relationships and all that was probably a big social issue in this newfound chaos of this newfound freedom, but still in transition. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Right. Alan?
I find interesting that the passage, at least of what we accepts the existence of slavery or whatever we want to call it, and it talks about the way you treat the people who are in your employ or under you because of this relationship. And it is not condemning or condoning either way. It's just saying if this is a in my view at least, it's saying that if this is a fact of life now, this is how you treat the people who are in this situation in a fair and a humane way, except when you pierce their ears.
Sarah, and then Yehuda after that. Go ahead, Sarah. You're muted.
I'm not sure if we're on slavery or on how we're treating women. So if Yehuda's on slavery, let him go first.
No, I'm gonna talk about a bigger thing.
So somebody just brought up, I think it's Ruth Ellen, how you treat a woman, and somebody was mentioning a ketubah before. I had heard a very interesting midrash on that. And I used to think when I first kind of heard about how the Orthodox get together and by the third meeting they're either engaged or they're not engaged and they get married, and and I'm thinking, well, I mean, how can you really get to know a person in just 3 meetings and get married? And now we have in this parsha some of the rules that get together. And what really strikes me, and I'm glad you pointed out the first sentence about the laws, and I totally understand where the Orthodox are coming from now in this kind of match marriage, and that is they already know the laws. They already are both on the same page pretty much, or they're going to find out real fast if they're on the same page concerning what they're devoting their lives to and how they're going to live under the law. So really, it's just a matter of checking out the chemistry. And in 2 or 3 times, they kind of get whether there's any chemistry there or not, because they already know, and the families already know what they're going to do, how they're going to live, what the laws are. They already know that. So I think that's a very kind of interesting thing that it's in this parsha in the beginning, right after the thing about the laws. And I just wanted to mention that as a sort of an interesting way to look at matching. Yeah.
Arnie?
We look at that part of the parsha where it talks about piercing the ear on the doorpost, because when you first read it, it sounded like to me that you're supposed to nail his ear to the doorpost. Seriously, can we look at that?
Yeah, and actually that has been, I've read discussion of that, like you're nailing him as if he can't move, right? He's there always for you. But the point is that how you accomplish piercing is by, and modern piercing, when people get their ears or whatever pierced, it's you got to have a solid surface behind. It's a reality. Whether it's a neat little thing that looks surgical or, the way it's done by putting a piece of ice against the ear and piercing against it. That's when I was a teenager. That's how girls pierced each other's ears.
Right.
Right. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yehuda, go ahead. And I want to come, I'm actually just going to put something in the text for Sarah. So Yehuda, go ahead.
I think that we should look at this in the context of the other major code of laws that was extant at that time, the Hammurabi Code. And the Hammurabi Code basically divided society into 3. There were the overlords on top, the commoners, and the slaves. And there was a different set of laws for each one of these. What's different about this is it's the same set of laws for everybody. That is a huge change. And important because people are being treated equally. There's also, behind all the writing, there's this move toward stopping slavery. You know, even though someone can decide that they still want to be under a particular master, the reality is that they also are given the opportunity to be free. And the move is away from slavery. And I think that's pretty important, because if the whole society is treated equally, on top of the fact that we're moving away from slavery, I think most people actually choose to be free.
Go ahead, Alan.
No, no, go ahead. You
No,
want to
no,
follow up? No.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to raise something different, other than talking about the slavery, and that's the terminology. We started to get sprinkled in there a few transgressions that will bring about death. And the wording, at least in the translation, I think is curious that it says, is doomed to die. Well, aren't we all? So I don't really understand the difference between shall be put to death and is doomed to die.
So just a response to that, I get to pick and choose how I understand that. So for my readings, the ones that I pick and choose are that very distinct wording in Torah shall be doomed to die implies more of a spiritual death. Some things just make you soulless. And that doomed to die is, to me, in that category. Because we already know that the idea that death, like, you know, taking your child out in front of the community and stoning him to death, that's not what it really means. It's not, there's no record that it ever happened in Judaism. That taking that and misinterpreting and using it to accomplish something that you already pre-believe and say, well, see, but it says so right there, so I'm justified, aren't I? It's about spiritual death, and that's how I like to look at it. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Are there two different words used, Aviva, when it says doomed to die? I'm looking at Safaria, and I'm not sure that they translate it the same way. But when you're reading, are they actually different Hebrew words, or is it just a matter of the translator's
Oh,
choice?
thank you, Alan. One who strikes his father or mother is doomed to die. Yes. Doomed to die. And what is your translation, Sfaria?
In Safari, it says the same thing as the others. One who kidnaps another, whether having sold or still holding them, shall be put to death. So it doesn't even make that distinction. It says put to death for all of them. I'm being picky about that, because this is my point all the time, is just if we get too comfortable using the connotations of what we know from our own language, which is not the original language, then I think sometimes we're led to make distinctions when there aren't any, or the opposite, or put too much weight on those distinctions. Not that what you said, Aviva, doesn't make sense, because obviously you also feel like there's different levels of understanding, the physical, the social, and the personal, spiritual as well. So, but
No, but you're right, Ruth Ellen. The language does,
even
what it means to us and what it means in Hebrew in the context of
right.
those days. I think you're absolutely
Because I
right.
think a lot of the conflicts in the world, well, we see that even the conflicts between different denominations of Judaism or any religion, it's all on the interpretation, right?
Yep.
And it's a slippery slope, because you say whose interpretation is likely to take precedence. And even that, if to the degree for practical purposes, we have to try to pick one above the other, it should be done diligently with sufficient analysis.
Well, Craig knows even interpretation of the law, right, Craig?
Right. It depends on what is, right? I mean,
one judge can interpret. Look at our Supreme Court.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, or unclarifying that.
whatever the case may be. Well, I think we should I can't find my list of where I decided to divide, but I think now, yeah, maybe, no, I don't know where it is. Anyhow, let's read and stop at some obvious place that I will choose arbitrarily. Okay, who wants to read?
I
I'll
can.
read.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Arnie, you go first.
Okay. And should men quarrel, and a man strike his fellow man with stone or with fist, and he does not die, but falls ill? If he gets up and goes about outside on his cane, the striker shall be clear. Only he shall pay for the loss of time, and he shall surely stand good for his cure. And should a man strike his male slave or slave girl with a rod, they die under his hand, they should surely be avenged. But if a day or two they should survive, they are not to be avenged, for they are his money. And should men brawl and collide with a pregnant woman, and her fetus comes out, that there be no other mishap, he shall surely be punished according to what his woman's husband imposes upon him. He shall pay by reckoning. And if there is a mishap, you shall pay a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise. And should a man strike the eye of his male slave, or the eye of his slave girl, and ruin it, he shall send them off free for their eye. And if he should knock out the tooth of his male slave, the tooth of his slave girl, he should send them off free for the tooth. And should an ox gore a man or a woman, and they die,
Oop, Arnie is frozen. Oh,
I didn't know if it was just me. I mean, if it was me.
There we got you back. Okay, good. But actually, I thought we should stop around an eye for an eye and spend a little time on
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Well, but here read the whole sentence. Eye for an eye, soul for a, I love that. Soul for a soul, nefesh tachat nefesh, eye for an eye. So let's go back to line 23, if you don't mind. Okay. And if there is a mishap, you shall pay a life for a life. Now, we don't know if that pertains to the line before, which dealt with the woman and the fetus, or if it's a new thought. Okay, but either way, the idea is that is there any can you repair damage by inflicting the same damage on something, and is that on somebody, or is that even one of the grossest misinterpretation that has followed some world religions to this day? So go for it, because it's pretty specific here. A burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise. It's kind of getting specific.
But it's commensurate damage is where the rabbis took it.
Right.
They never ever thought that we should do exactly extract this for that. It's right, what's this worth? And that's the way our legal system works too, with the exception of when you murder somebody. But other than that, there tends to be, civil damage instead.
could we look at that line before with the fetus?
Yes.
That kind of blew me away.
Okay, so let me just syntax wise. When something starts with vichi, it is, and should a man strike his male servant or his slave girl, etc. When something starts with that, it is the biggest acknowledgement that bad things happen because people do bad things. It doesn't say go out and hit someone, none of that. It says in the event, because people do weird shit. It's not it's an acknowledgement of a state of being human and having things that cause you to do harm to others. That's all it means. So, okay, so that if you use that filter and you say, if it should happen, because it does happen, and we know that a man strike his male slave or a slave girl with a rod, and they die under his hand, etc. Or are we in the wrong line? I don't know. Oh, here we go. It's line 22 you're looking at. Okay. Again, the same thing. V'chi. Should men brawl? Do men brawl? Do
Yeah,
men
but
brawl? They do.
who was it? Was one of the men brawling the husband whose wife lost a fetus? Or is it just two guys fighting and they knock into this woman on the sidelines?
Either
It's,
way, either way, it's not about the men. It's about the damage. That's the thing. It says people do weird stuff. So here's a situation out of the blue. Two men might be fighting each other. Maybe they're fighting over the honor of somebody. Maybe they're fighting over a woman. Maybe they're just fighting. They happen to hit someone, right? Not going to draw any similarities to anything we've seen in the news recently, God forbid. But let's just pretend that in the act of doing something totally irrelevant, unrelated, you elbow a pregnant woman and there's damage to her fetus. Okay, now read the rest of the line.
pay by a reckoning? Is that what you're saying?
So here, line 22. Should men brawl, because men brawl, and collide with a pregnant woman, and her fetus comes out, in other words, she aborts, but there be no mishap, or the fetus comes out and he's fine. Let's say she's far enough along and that bump causes her to deliver spontaneously and the fetus is fine and the baby is fine and born alive. Then
Nothing, but it says he shall surely. There's two guys fighting.
right.
So they're both not responsible then. It's just the guy whose elbow is involved is responsible.
Now it's so reading to that level of detail, it involves a lot of legalities because it implies that the woman is married and that the husband has rights. Look at the rest of the sentence. It says, there be no mishap, he shall surely be punished according to what the woman's husband imposes upon him, and he shall pay by reckoning.
So the husband could rule anything. He says you could die, you could pay me 20 shekels, whatever he decides is okay. Is that what it says?
Not whatever he
No.
decides it's okay, because it assigns
An
an
eye,
actual value
right,
to the potential of a human.
right. And that's what an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't literally mean an eye for an eye necessarily. It means it's the equal to what damage you have caused.
Commensurate value.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a dead body there, a fetus, or unless the Jewish law doesn't
No,
consider
she's saying
that.
the fetus survived, right?
No.
Didn't you?
No,
Isn't
well,
that what
but that goes to the Jewish thing of a fetus is not considered a human being until it is born.
Oh, it's
So
a
if-
shaduk,
if
not a
if in
judkin.
a course
right.
of something caused by humans, a woman delivers before term and the fetus survives, it's different than if it doesn't survive. But it's not the same because an unborn fetus is not a human. That's the subtext underneath here, that there is a difference. Does it say anything about it being okay for men to fight in such a degree that a woman could be an innocent bystander and be hit? That's not the point of this particular line. The difference in this line, the law describes the implication of killing someone who's not yet born, who has potential, versus someone who is actually alive. So we don't get any simplicity, Arnie. I've looked for it and I cannot find it. I cannot find that place I'm looking for which says, oh, that's simple enough, I can understand that. And to this day, this affects the ability of a woman in Israel to get an abortion, even if she's Orthodox, because of the understanding of what it means for the future of the living person. So one thing happens, the damage caused by somebody having a miscarriage or aborting, that's one thing. The potential harm for the future of humanity or the future of one particular family is a different thing. But they all not only have their own value, but they also, other cultures in the time that our ancestors came out of Egypt, there were precedents. So some of these laws speak directly to those already existing precedents in the laws of other religions or whatever. So it is complex. I've tried to understand the simplicity in all of this, but what I understand is in the time that these were written, there were already laws that the Israelites were bound by. They never lived alone outside of other society. Part of the process that is starting now after Sinai and the wanderings in the desert is to start to differentiate the Bnei Israel, the Israelites, from the others. And that's why in some commentaries they say, starting with the idea of slavery and acknowledging that even Hebrews had slaves is realistic. It would be totally unrealistic to say the day you cross the sea, you're washed of all your former habits or whatever you picked up over generations from other cultures. And that's why in some commentaries they say that's why this is the first one. The first laws mentioned are about slavery, because we were enslavers too. And again, chattel slavery, let's differentiate that, because we're talking about eved means two things, servant and slave. There's no different word for it. Eved, the root word just means work. Whether you're forcing someone to work for you or they're working for you because they have no other option to pay a debt, they are your responsibility because you have a responsibility to the slave. And that's the point.
So it also mentions you have to release them. What was it, after 6 years or something? Wasn't there also a thing with Jubilee where you had to release your slaves? So
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
So
there's
the number 7 and it's all its magical things. So the
After
7th year
7
you
years.
release a slave, the
Right.
49th year is a Jubilee year. There's a lot there, and we get to talk about it a little bit later on if we want to. But the point to me about that is, because your slave will one day be released, do you want to be that person who lives in the same society as somebody that you may have embittered, who will one day be free? Or do you want to maybe be a good slave owner because that slave will one day be free? That's it. It always throws it back to understanding that you as a person, the things that you are commanded to do, they really aren't because some God was bored and said, "Oh, let's throw up this interesting thing. Wouldn't this be intriguing?" Because it has to do with what actually on the ground, things that were really happening.
Thank you. That really helps me understand.
And didn't Jacob have to work 7 years before he could get Rebecca?
And then again.
And then again. That's right.
But he was in effect indentured. Different
Well,
than
I
being a
mean,
slave.
it's still the number 7, I guess is my point.
But we
Right.
just said we're not differentiating indentured and slave semantically.
Right. That's right. In Hebrew,
but-
there is no differentiation.
But isn't there a distinction there where Jacob entered into an agreement with Laban? He was not purchased by
Rachel.
Laban, or that he entered into an agreement. The fact that Laban didn't live up to the agreement is a problem, because that's why he wound up with Leah first. But even so,
Right.
it's not the same, I think, as somebody who has been bought and paid for, or whose services have been bought and paid for. He agreed
Right.
to do it voluntarily.
And I meant Rachel, I meant Rachel, not Rebecca. I said Rebecca. But he worked 7 years and then he was tricked into marrying Leah, and then another 7 years for Rachel. So the 7 years comes up every 7 years, which is interesting because, I mean, it's not that he's set free after 7 years.
It's actually every 6 years and a day.
Is that right?
In the
In the
Well,
7th year. That's because it's in the 7th year.
In the 7th year. I got it. I didn't think of that.
Mm-hmm. Ruth Ellen.
Well, here, whether it is coincidental that Jacob was going to work for 7 years or not, I don't know. But in terms of the law, I think ultimately that number goes back to God rested on the 7th day. It's all the Shabbat. So this is a bigger Shabbat over a longer period of time. So
Yeah.
you work, you rest. Now, even labor, what we're talking about there, if we're saying that it's not really a slave, what you're really describing is a labor contract. In Jacob's case, he didn't ask for money right then. He asked for the hand in marriage of the daughter or sister, whatever. And this is the first year we're doing this with Arnie and Craig. These distinctions, it's all like, it depends. Like with this pregnant woman here, that would be like, maybe Craig, forgive me if I'm simplifying, but I'm wrong. Like involuntary manslaughter as opposed to murder. The ultimate deal here with all these distinctions is that what's important is the intent, whether it was done with malice or not. Later, we have that famous phrase, justice shall thou pursue. That has not explicitly been said here, but all these laws and everything about that is set up to be as fair and just as one can be, given the circumstances, and given that when certain losses happen, they're irreplaceable, even if they're not ultimate death. You lose certain opportunities because something happened that you didn't expect to happen.
Craig?
And
Oh,
and you're trying to hold somebody accountable for that. And other years we've said that the eye for the eye, tooth for the tooth. Yehuda alluded to this, and I thank you, Yehuda, for educating me about the specifics in the Hammurabi Code, because here to say the distinction is, it doesn't matter if they're your indentured servant / slave, if they're your parent, your child, the stranger who wanders into your camp, the same rules apply. So as opposed to differentiate from their past lives and in other cultures where there were a different set of rules depending on your social status. So that's the unique thing that's introduced here that the Israelites shed as an example to the world on. Right.
I want to hear Craig. It looks like you're trying to say
Genesis
something.
chapter 30, verses 25 through 43.
Okay. I find this parsha a little disappointing because God is supposed to be wise, omnipotent, and yet we have this talk about slavery, which we've subsequently abolished, polygamy, which we've gotten rid of. So I'm wondering why it's almost like the founders of the Constitution had their culture and their realization of the weaponry at the time when they made the Second Amendment, but you'd expect more of God. And if he's going to lay out these laws, for example, about murder, then where are the affirmative defenses like self-defense or defense of others? There are nuances to these things. And I'm just wondering why God didn't make these rules perfect at the outset, and that Jews have had to modify it, eventually getting rid of polygamy, getting rid of slavery. Really, in America, there were Jewish slave owners through the Civil War. So I'm just wondering why God wasn't more ahead of his time, and why he didn't anticipate all these things and end these bad things earlier, or were they necessary earlier?
Arnie, go ahead.
Well, let's remember that the Southern slave owners used the Bible to, point out that God condoned slavery.
Yeah.
Look, it's in the Bible. It must be okay. That's
and the Mormons with polygamy. Right.
Yeah,
Polygamy was our thing too.
Yeah, and the framers of the Constitution owned slaves, like you said, so it's it's just like man has been so inhumane. It's a whole history, and things don't change much. If we didn't fight about that, we'd be fighting about what color your eyes are, the brown eyes against the blue eyes, or the attached earlobes against the detached earlobes, or whatever it is, it's human nature.
By the way, there were Jewish slave owners in the South.
That's
Judah
what I said.
Benjamin was the Secretary of War, but it was only considered 1 or 2%, and they were tended to be very small. They weren't the power structure.
Did those Jews rely on the Torah like the Christian slaveholders did?
I don't know. Let's read a biography of Judah Benjamin.
Uh-huh.
All right, I have Sarah and then Ruth Ellen.
Um, this must, and I don't know the answer to this, but this must have something to do with free will. And I don't know how you reconcile that with divine providence and, receiving the law on Mount Sinai from directly from Hashem. But I think that man has free will, and we are the ones that ultimately decide what's righteous and what's not righteous. And Hashem sort of puts it out there, but it's up to us to come to these things. Evidently, it took us a long time to totally wipe out slavery and decide that it's not, well, we didn't wipe it out totally, but I mean, in America, the way that it was in the 1800s and before. So I think it has to do with free will. Man, what do they say? God plans and man decides, or something like that.
Menschen getracht, Gott gelacht.
It's something like that's right, Arnie. Something like that. Yeah. So I think ultimately, Craig, it's us. It's not God that puts this out there. It's us. We decide how we're going to use these things and whether they're righteous or not. And that's free will. Otherwise, if God just put it all out there and made it perfect, we wouldn't have free will.
Ruth Ellen?
I agree with some of what I'm going to say is along the line of what Sarah's just alluding to. And in Craig's case again, but going back to the fact that individuals edited this, just wait, Craig, wait till we get to later in this and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, Numbers. You're going to see everything outlined, because I think that as these different cases came up, then they had to be addressed as they came up. But also to Sarah's point, and in general, the whole dichotomy, the paradox of living in this life is these are, when we say at Yom Kippur, that we are atoning for our sins against Hashem, but any sins against other human beings are not absolved until we make amends. And so this is making a distinction between our relationship with Hashem and our relationship to the other creatures on earth, which obviously are tied together. But again, in the spiritual realm above, from the cloud of smoke and all that, versus the physical realm where we all live together, requires, in a pragmatic sense, a different order of order, a different order of rules and laws. Well, I'll let Yehuda go. So I basically said what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
I thought of an example of how commensurate value has to take place. Let us pose the hypothetical that the person who puts an eye out of somebody else is already got one eye. If you did an eye for an eye, you would end up making that person blind, which is much, much graver than just the trade of an eye for an eye. So there has to be commensurate value, because basically you're making the person blind in an eye for an eye.
I just thought about how slowly human consciousness has evolved. I mean, it took another 5,000 years to get the Equal Rights Amendment,
Right.
I mean, so
There is no
when you
Equal
look
Rights
at the
Amendment.
time
Still haven't
of
passed
the
it,
Jews in slavery till they get out, and they're making some laws about let's treat slaves nicely or indentured servants, and what a great progress that is compared to, and that was a few years, okay? Then you look at a timeline of 5,000 years that where we didn't progress very much. It's pretty amazing.
Actually, I have a case in point. That when we were discussing the specifics of some of these things that I pointed out, what came to mind was this headline from the New York Times yesterday, which I think if we were doing the Torah now, this could be one of those one of those hypotheticals.
Yeah. Interesting.
If someone were to take his pickleball rattle and racket and slap somebody in the nose, and they couldn't walk away, then I mean, you could apply that same thing. But I feel like what Sarah was bringing up is that I think is an important thing to consider is that these are incidents that may have occurred at some point, or there was somebody who brought this case before Moses or the judges who had been set up, and it made sense to include them in the Torah because they had happened and they had to come up with some solution for them.
But I want to go back to put the context into how what did I just do? Okay. What I like to keep in mind, because, let's just not escape the fact that this is tough to read, and it's tough to be who we are in the world we're living in today, and not only in our idealized American democracy, but for me also in my idealized state of Israel. That when a people have come out of a place of oppression, that oppression is part of who they are. And they do not have the option of just shedding it all at once. If an outside source comes and forces you into democracy, it is a coercive act and it has no value. The people have to learn to be free. And a couple of chapters ago, when we ended with the Amalekites, the important thing about the Amalekites is that one quality in a people that made it okay to go to not fight the warriors at the front of the line, but go to the back where the weakest are and attack the weakest in society, that was so abominable. It was an example to the Israelites. You are going to be a free nation. You're going to be making decisions that affect other people. Here's one example of an absolute no. Right? And, it comes out of context. Go ahead, Yehuda.
It also distinguished man from animal, because in a traditional animal setting, those are the animals that get attacked.
Yeah. So back to giving this context, and then I'm going to try to shut up. Those are very hard for me. Here we are, the first revelation of the 10 kind of general overlying, at once simple to look at and at once difficult to understand. And now we come to the enumeration. It is a very important part of the next 40 years, because in the 40 years, it's not only about what the Israelites learn in terms of laws, but what they shed along the way. And so I have to look at it in the context of this is pre-covenant. This is like in the creation of the idea of a partnership. And that's why we see 3 times the word na'aseh, we will do, before the word venishma, and we will hear comes into it. It is, it's an act of faith that comes out of fear, but faith that comes out of fear is very vulnerable, and that's where the nishma comes into it for me later on. That's how I need to understand it, because there is an element of blind faithness. It's very disturbing, but it comes always with a reminder of who you were, so that you can always see yourself in others. That's the thing. This is where we're getting to in this parasha, is the ability to see yourself in others, because without that, you don't actually have a guide to life. I see Yehuda's hand up and then Sarah's. Go ahead, Yehuda.
The word nishma implies a taking in. Naseh is just doing something, but nishma, we're taking it in. So it makes sense that it be the second word, because, it might be that you get to the point of taking it in by doing it.
What do you
Sarah?
mean? What do you mean, Yehuda?
Fake it till you make it? Is that what you mean?
No, it's just Nishma, you understand the thing of taking it in. By hearing it means you've taken it in into your
Okay,
brain.
okay,
Okay.
okay, okay.
So, but that's the second one. When you're doing something, you're just doing it. You haven't necessarily taken it in, you're just
I
doing
got,
it.
I
It's
see,
outside yourself. But it
I
might
see.
be as you do it, that's part of the process of beginning to take something in.
What I was, my comment in a way, interestingly enough, I was thinking about when uh Moses, was it Yitro, told Moses to appoint judges, right? Because he was taking on too much and getting worn out. And we always look at it from that point of view, but the other put it on the people, the judges of to have to make decisions in the future. And so that goes along with like slavery and other things that down through the future, they had to start making their own decisions, taking it in, like as you were saying, Yehuda. And as we take things in, perhaps we change laws and hopefully we advance. I don't know. I really question how much we've advanced. Like we don't have literal people working in cotton fields. However, I mean, I talk to people from the South and they still think that blacks are inferior to whites. And that's a really interesting thing that we have that there are people that still have that mindset in today's world. So I guess what I'm saying is I think we at some point the Hebrew people had to have judges and other people to update these laws, to interpret these laws, to take it in. As you said, Yehuda, it's an
Yeah.
interesting concept. Yeah.
I want to jump us forward a huge bit to go all the way to 22:19. Stop right before 22:20. So whoever's got breath, go for it. When you get tired, stop and somebody else will pick up. I think Arnie, you were ready to read earlier.
Didn't I read?
Yes, he
Oh,
did.
yeah, you did. Okay.
I'll read.
Sure.
And should an ox gore a man or a woman and they die, the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, and the ox's owner is clear. And if the ox is a gorer from time past, and was warned against to his owner, who did not keep it in, and it caused the death of a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner too shall be put to death. If restitution be set for him, he shall pay for the redemption of his life, whatever will be set for him. Whether a son it gore or a daughter it gore, according to this practice, it shall be done to him. If the ox should gore a male slave or a slave girl, 30 shekels of silver he shall give to their master, and the ox shall be stoned. And should a man open a pit, or should a man dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or donkey fall in, the owner of the pit shall pay silver, shall make good to its owner, and the carcass shall be his. And should a man's ox collide with his fellow man's ox and it die, they shall sell the live ox and divide the money for it equally, and the carcass too they shall divide equally. Or if it is known that the ox is a gorer from time past, and its owner did not keep it in, he shall surely pay an ox for the ox, and the carcass shall be his. Should a man steal an ox or a sheep and slaughter it or sell it, 5 cattle he shall pay for the ox, and 4 sheep for the sheep. If while tunneling a thief should be found and is struck down and dies, there is no blood guilt for him. If the sun rises upon him, there is blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has not the means, he shall be sold for his theft. If what is stolen should indeed be found alive in his hands, from ox to donkey to sheep, he shall pay double. Should a man let his beast graze in a field or a vineyard, and he send his beast to graze in another's field, from the best of his field and the best of his vineyard shall he pay. Should a fire go forth and catch in thorns, and stacked or standing grain, or the field be consumed, he who set the fire shall surely pay. Should a man give his fellow man money or goods for safekeeping, and they are stolen from the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall approach the gods to swear that he has not laid hands on his fellow man's effects. In every matter of breach of trust, for an ox, for a donkey, for a sheep, for a cloak, for every loss about which one may say, this is it, the matter of both shall come before the gods. Wow. He whom the gods find guilty shall pay double to his fellow man. Should a man give to his fellow man a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any beast for safekeeping, and it die or be maimed or carried off with no witness, there shall be an oath by the Lord between the two of them that he has not laid hands on his fellow man's effects. The owner shall accept, and he shall not pay. If indeed it be stolen from him, he shall pay its owner. If it be torn up by beasts, he shall bring it in evidence. He shall not pay for what was torn up by beasts. And should a man borrow it from his fellow man, and it be hurt or die, its owner not being with it, he shall surely pay. If its owner is with it, he shall not pay. If he is hired, he gets his hire. And should a man seduce a virgin who has not been betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely pay a bride price for her as his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall weigh out silver according to the bride price for virgins. Wow, I would really like to know why it says gods and gods, and then it says the Lord. So what is that about? Like the other gods that people believed in? I mean, with a
It's
small g, it's not Hashem, that's for sure.
it's very odd.
Yeah,
It struck me as well.
yeah.
Remember, you shall have no gods before me. I
Yep.
mean, God recognized there were other gods, and Jews in ancient times actually worshipped other gods. There's evidence of even the goddess being worshipped in
By
the
some Jews,
archaeological research of Elephantine.
by some, not by all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, why is it in here?
Yeah, right.
I have something here in the altar notes. Traditional commentators and some modern ones as well interpret Elohim as a reference to judges, though if this was the case, it would be a usage unique to the Book of the Covenant. This translation presumes that this is a vestige of pre-monotheistic verbal usage preserved in this relatively archaic legal code. It not referring to household gods, but seemed to be a loose indication of deities at a local sanctuary. So it's one of those that needs some explaining, I guess.
Yeah,
And
really.
also in Hebrew, when you read the Hebrew text, when it says Yud Hey Vav Hey, that is one very specific, like the God whose name we don't know. And Elohim could be a legal term, as Alan points out, a term that comes out of the society of the time that's not legal, that refers to gods of other people. But in Hebrew, it's very clear because the only place where you understand God with a capital G for sure is the Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Or
what is the Hebrew for the gods?
Ha Elohim.
No, I mean in the text.
Yeah. So for example,
So like so when
it-
I read gods,
yeah,
what's the Hebrew that is in there?
Ha Elohim. So for example, I'm just
Really?
randomly in this one line you read, when a person gives money or goods to another for safekeeping and they're stolen from that person, uh, oh, am I right? Yeah. Stolen from that person's house. If caught, the thief shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall depose before God, El Elohim, and deny laying hands on the other's property.
But
That's
that's God, not gods.
right, but in the Hebrew it's El Elohim. Two,
Well, okay, so Elohim is plural, right?
yeah. I don't
Elohim.
know how to explain this any better, but we're at a place in history that still acknowledges other gods. We are not at the place yet, because remember, we're just past the first reading of the Ten Commandments or the 10 whatever, and there's not really a clarity. It comes without explanation. It doesn't come with
Maybe it means if it involves people who worship other gods, that those gods may determine the punish. I mean, I don't know.
So all these things that you're reading now, they have a relationship. They are actual laws for actual instances. It is we're not at that place of uh, the covenant being leading forward yet. It's the idea of the covenant. How people come to accept and do before they believe is about, there were things that happened that couldn't be explained in any other way. There was greatness in the cloud and the fire and all that. That has nothing to do with the instructions for how to live in society. Like, how do you not
It's
harm your fellow human? So I
it's
don't know how to, I'm going to
it
stop.
it doesn't because it's after Sinai. I mean, Moses is very clear about one God, and yet we see this after Sinai, so it's very confusing. I
I'll
mean,
let
I don't know.
you the go ahead, and then we'll go to Arnie and Ruth Ellen and see if someone can put more clarity onto it. Go ahead, Yehuda.
I want to share an epiphany that I feel like I've come up with to understand what Elohim means. Elohim is very, very sophisticated word that is unique to the Jews' understanding of how to deal with God per se. If we start with the statement, we are made in the image of God, that really constitutes that every single one of us is very different. And thereby, our understanding of what constitutes God is also different. And yet, together, we are a community who actually does this. So, therefore, Elohim refers to each of our different understandings as a total community. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way of looking at it, I think.
It's a very sophisticated approach. I don't think anybody but the Jews have anything like this at all. That we actually accept that we each have a different understanding of what it is. And yet, as a whole, that is God. The whole is all of the understandings.
But we don't have different gods. I mean, we don't refer to it as different gods.
No, I'm saying the
No,
Elohim refers to
I understand.
the fact that we each uniquely
I
have
understand.
our own understanding, but that all constitutes the one.
I understand. Yeah.
Arnie?
So I was listening to a podcast about this week, and the way this rabbi interpreted it was Elohim, like Aviva said, also meant judges in the context of the ancient Hebrew, and or elders who made decisions and things like that. Another thing I heard was in the construction of Yud He, it's a contraction of three words.
Right.
And maybe Aviva could confirm this of I am, I was, and I will be. That it's like three Hebrew words compacted into one.
You can definitely find the Hebrew to justify that. And I've heard that one before, and I love it because it does include all that, like the notion, the possibility, and the reality all at the same time. I love it. But I just want to say that what we're really struggling with to put words to, I actually found something here in my commentary. This idea of divine authorship of law, there's a distinction between civil and religious law. And that this is where we're kind of at this, there's civil and religious law. And at this point, the lines are blurred. There isn't a real distinction there. So the harming of a human or an animal. So the difference, for example, if your animal hurt another animal, there's one consequence. But if your animal repeatedly hurt another animal, there's a different consequence. Why? Because you as a human should be observant, and you should prevent your animal from doing the same thing, like maybe not get in the same situation. So this is where we're at. That's why I think it's so hard to understand these lines. There is I think an intentional blurring still. There's some things that you as a human will never get to the bottom of, yet you must still do. I see it as the tension. This is the tension. And, when Moses disappears for 40 days and people don't have that direct line feeding them the direct words, they're lost. Because they're not yet at the point of saying, oh, we understand. And therefore, oh, we got it all. Now we can just do the right thing. There never comes that time.
You know what you just said about the if then, that's the civil law. There's a term for the other type of law, which is just the law that's the statement, called apodictic.
Yeah.
And that particular law is not, there's no if then in an apodictic law. For example, do not commit adultery. That is apodictic. It's not if something, then something.
Yeah.
I
If-
kind of like Arnie's explanation that that some Hebrews were still in more of a Canaanite worship of gods. That makes the most sense to me. I don't know.
I just read that also in Exodus 21:6, it also connotates that Elohim means judges.
That's what Alan was saying from the altar commentary.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ruth Ellen and then Alan.
Not wanting to beat a dead horse, but I will add to that as well, that this is like the divine right of kings, I'm going to compare it to. Like that, it implies, and so it all started with Sarah's question, and Sarah's question only came up because it was in translation. Here we go, lost in translation. Blame everything on the Tower of Babel. Why they translated it as the term God, it's like the highest authority short of God. In other words, it has the divine imprimatur on their ability to make the best judgment call in a human endeavor. So that's really how it should be seen. And overall, I come back to the fact that all these ifs and thens that Greg is talking about, and maybe that's why this is considered the blueprint for jurisprudence today, what have you, is that and every time we get into trouble is when we generalize. In some ways, that just goes to what Yehuda just said too. Some things seem to be self-evident that they are so morally evil and yucky that you can make a declarative, this you shall not do under any circumstances. But most of living isn't like that. And so what all of this is saying to us, don't make a broad generalization ever, because you don't until you know all the consequences. That doesn't mean justice shouldn't be served or everybody should get away with everything. It's just that you cannot, we're going to get into this right now. I mean, there's just a new movie came out, supposedly. It sounds like the Minority Report, where they're going to be AI judges. AI judges are going to they're going to know everything clearly, and they're going to give a person 3 hours to prove that they're not guilty, kind of thing, and I just threw that in just because these questions are going to come up more in our face right now, in terms of how does
Right.
one weigh properly, and what is the proper punishment, which is what all this eye for eye, tooth for tooth stuff is about. And ultimately that is so that you don't you don't create more harm than was done to you. I'm looking at some of these little commentaries and some of these phrases in Sepharia, and the rabbis are talking about, well, what if somebody's blind and you're going to take it? What if they only lost 1/3 of their eyesight? Well, if you're going to say the eye for the eye, you can't specifically go in and exclusively take 1/3 of the eye. So they're trying to come up with what we do in modern liability law now, which is put a monetary value on the impact of a given loss, not to specifically directly take that exact same presumed equal loss back from somebody physically. Although they talk about times where, and back then, maybe that's what you had to do because that was the best choice. Again, to Yehuda's point about if the person's already blind, what good is it going to do to blind somebody who's blind? So this was not ever meant to be taken literally, except maybe in very rare occasion, way back in the day.
But to beat that horse a little further, we see that, still when Moses came down from Sinai, they had a golden calf. So there was that was still very much a part of, it was still in their consciousness. This is an evolutionary, I see it as an evolutionary kind of thing. So I don't exactly know what God's means, but, it seems like there were little, household tchotchke gods things that people carried around. And I think, this is
I think
part.
you're digressing, Sarah. You're on a whole different can of worms now in terms of
Well,
what
I'm just
representation of
I'm
God.
just
That's not what's
beating
going on here. I think they're talking about people who had the authority, like the Archbishop
the
of Canterbury.
judges, yeah, the judges. But I'm
Yeah.
going back to my original thing, which was what Arnie said. I think it could be judges too, but I certainly see that this mindset of one God was something that really had to be purified throughout the 40 years in the desert, that they carried this out of Egypt with them, and there was still some of that going on. So, in addition to judges or other interpretations, yeah, that's why I said I'm beating that horse again.
Okay, and I want to hear Alan
The
and then
horse has been
Arnie.
beaten enough.
Well, that's exactly. And in fact, that's the point that I wanted to get to is that yeah, I want to stand up for the horse, actually for the ox in this case. What did the ox do to deserve to be stoned to death? If we talk about free will, there doesn't seem to be any indication anywhere that animals also have that free will. It's up to the owner, as Aviva pointed out, and as the Parsha points out, it's up to the owner to be aware of the animal's potential danger and prevent that from happening, but that the animal gets put to death for a perfectly natural, what might have been a defensive measure it took. We don't know why the animal gored. It's just a matter that the ox did that, and yet the animal gets to suffer for that. That hardly seems fair, and especially since we have had other passages which tell us about how we should be concerned for animals. If you come across your enemy's donkey and it's overloaded and has fallen down on the side of the road, you must help it get up. That was one of the earlier instructions, and so it seems as though there's something mixed up in there. But I also want to throw in just to get a moment of time that this is clearly something that is relating to what's going to be a future society. Money? They don't have any money. They're not, there's no currency being exchanged here, and yet it's talked about in terms of what is to be done in many of these cases. And people don't have fields of grain yet. They're wandering in the desert. So all of this is referring to something yet to come, not necessarily what they're living with at the moment that these laws are being given, if we believe that they were given at that moment.
Thank you, Arnie, and that's very important, Ellen, by the way, because there's a background. The people were not in a unique place in the world where nothing was going on around them, and a lot of what we see, the complexity of this, comes from real laws that some of them actually made sense. So we're not. It takes a while to take all that away, to clear all that, and that's, I think, the point that you're trying to make. Arnie, go ahead.
So is this before the kashrut laws? Because obviously you would normally use a shochet to kill a calf, right? And the other thing is we repeated the sin of the golden calf later on. The 10 tribes built another golden calf, so I guess we never learn.
Ruth Ellen.
Okay, picking on Alan a little bit, because there again, I think he's conflating a generality with what they're talking about here, which is specifically what I said. You have to look at every situation. The ox here, he's not blaming the ox, but we are recognizing that, like Adam was put over the animals. Animals should be taken care of. They, quote unquote, have rights, but they're not human beings. They're a little below. So the deal here is what that is saying is, don't blame the owner for a wild ox's behavior. But the ox, like a rabid dog or a dog that bites his neighbor's kids too many times, is going to be put to sleep. The ultimate right thing to do is to not give this ox another opportunity to do another horrendous thing like that. It's not saying, that we don't believe that animals should be taken care of. This is a specific situation where we have an unruly ox and we can't predict what he's going to do. And human life is then going to take priority over that specific ox. But again, this is just an example as to say, well, it depends. Do not generalize, do not stereotype, do not make assumptions until you look at all the facts. So when this is read in the Bible like this, it seems like, why is it so picky? And then we try to generalize above it, and that's where we get into a lot of trouble, I think.
Yeah, but then you got a dead ox you can't eat. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, taking
we
these
just got to
things.
say, and me, the perfectionist who could go on and on, sometimes we just got to say, and that's the way it is, and keep going.
Yeah.
So that's the way it is, and let's keep going. And Alan, I meant to get past the next 4 troublesome lines in that last reading so we could put them behind us, but alas, we did not. So where I really wanted to get was to line 20 and start at line 20. So let's read those lines, because we must, because that's our tradition at Kona Beit Shalom. There we go. No, it's 2 lines before this, I believe. I think we stopped at, yeah, is that where we stopped? I think we stopped at 14.
Yes.
All right, who wants to read? And we're going to not read too many lines right now, because the crux of what I think is the crux of this parasha comes up in a very brief time here. So someone wants
I'll
to
read if you want.
Okay, sure.
And should a man seduce a virgin who has not been betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely pay a bride price for her as his wife. If her father, oh no, we did read this. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall weigh out silver according to the bride price for virgins. No witch shall you let live. Whosoever lies with a beast is doomed to die. Whosoever sacrifices to a god, small g, except to the Lord alone, shall be put under the ban. You shall not cheat a sojourner, and you shall not oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. No widow nor orphan shall you abuse. If you indeed abuse them, when they cry out to me, I will surely hear their outcry, and my wrath shall flare up, and I will kill you by the sword, and your wives shall be widows and your children orphans. If you should lend money to my people, to the pauper among you, you shall not be to him like a creditor. You shall not impose interest on him. If you should indeed take in pledge your fellow man's cloak, before the sun comes down, you shall return it to him. For it is his sole covering, it is his cloak for his skin. In what can he lie? And so when he cries out to me, I will hear him, for I am compassionate. You shall not vilify Hashem, nor shall you curse a chief among your people. The first yield of your vats and the first yield of your grain you shall not delay to give. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. Thus shall you do with your ox and your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. And consecrated men you shall be to me. Flesh in the field, torn by beasts, you shall not eat. To the dog you shall fling it.
Okay,
You
this
shall
is
not.
this is not a bad place to stop. I mean, really, there's no good place to stop here. But the buried lines in here that were sandwiched between things that I'd really not spend the time talking about because I have not resolved them either after all these years, are that line that is actually repeated almost verbatim twice in this one parasha. When something is repeated almost verbatim twice in one parasha, it gives it more weight. And that's the line. You shall not wrong nor oppress a stranger. Veger lo tone velo tilchatzenu. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Followed by, you shall not cheat a sojourner on the let's see, the widow. No widow nor orphan shall you abuse. And all the way to the line about, and if you take their clothing in payment, return it to them before the sun goes down, because you know what, they're human. They might be cold, right? So I like these lines in particular, especially that line 20 that's repeated verbatim, have weight to them, and these are lines that we should always be checking ourselves against. We don't have oxen to lend out to our neighbors. We don't have oxen who might destroy. We have dogs nowadays, so if your dog bites another dog, whatever, it's a false equivalent. It has nothing to do with anything. But the fact that if there is someone who's dependent on you, you are not, under any circumstances, allowed to wrong them or oppress them. That has never not been part of the conversation. So let's concentrate for a few minutes on these lines. I mean, because we can't not read them. We can't not see the world we're living in these words at any time, but at this time in particular. So let's give them some weight.
I also don't want to skip over the line about not charging interest to our own people. Yep. This is one of those that's come back to bite us. Mm-hmm. Let's go read Merchant of Venice and the whole history of things that have been held against us as a people for having these rules, and why it's in there.
Which line was that?
That's the line 24.
24. Okay. Oh yeah. If you lend money to my people, le'ami, to the poor among you, do not act toward them as a creditor. Exact no interest from them. Okay. So let's actually look at the words. It says, if you lend money to my people being not the Israelites yet, the covenant is not the overriding thing yet. It is to the poor among you. Though that's what God is saying. The poor among you are my people. That's the spin that I have to put on it, because historically, the ability to say chosen people among themselves don't have to act holy, but toward the outsiders, they don't have to act holy. That's basically what, the Merchant of Venice, that's the thing. The Jews take care of themselves and they take money from everyone else. Doesn't actually say that here. God says, my people are the oppressed. There is no nation yet. There is no country yet. Mm-hmm. Right.
And that ties into the cloak later on in that same
Because a
group of
person might get
passages.
cold when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
God says, these are my people. They're not specifically as my chosen people. God says, these are my people. They may be cold. You know, don't press them. The point is, don't press them to a point where they give up. You require them to give up their humanity. Don't dehumanize. Whether you're wealthy or poor, when the sun goes down and you have no covering, you feel the coldness on your skin. Sarah, go ahead.
You're muted, Sarah. Unmute.
All right, thank you. My problem with what you're saying is that it's been taken in, this thing about charging interest has been taken into the Jewish, after it becomes a nation. I mean, it's so whatever God meant, by my people, and you're saying that there wasn't a Jewish nation at that point, it was used, and that's why people say that. Probably, I don't know why they say that, but that's probably why it's, I mean, I don't know, to this day, is that true? To this day, I guess, if you go to a bank and you're going to have interest, whether you're Jewish or not, and whether the bank owner is Jewish or not. But if you lend money in an Orthodox community in today's world, or since the Jewish people became a nation, this idea of not charging interest seems like it's been carried along down through the years, regardless of what God meant at the time. So,
I think Yoda has something to add.
So you have to question that is built into this, that if you lend money to someone, you suffer a loss. Because built into lending money is the loss of opportunity cost. And if it should be a wash that you shouldn't make money by lending money, and instead, if you don't charge some amount of interest, you end up losing money because that money could be making money in some other fashion. If you're making 5% in the bank and you take that money out and you give it to somebody else, you're no longer making that 5%. So you've lost that money. So opportunity cost isn't built into this whole thing, and yet we all understand what it is.
yeah. But from an outsider point of view, it's a problem.
So what's the
I don't have go ahead.
No, I'm not asking a question that needs an answer. What's the moral imperative? The moral imperative that you help someone who is poor come out of poverty. Right?
You help a Jew who's poor come out of poverty, not necessarily. This is talking about from a Jew to a Jew.
Okay.
It's not
Yes.
talking about from a Jew to a Gentile, or a Jew helping
Well, that's
a Gentile.
how it's been interpreted, but not necessarily by Jewish interpreters, but more by other religions who have had prescriptions against charging interest and say if you need to borrow money, you need to go to the Jews because we can't charge interest, but they can. And so it's something that has come back to bite us because of an interpretation, not necessarily what the meaning, as Aviva was pointing out, what the deeper meaning is of the, basically, what did Jesus say about the poorest among us? You must reach out to them and lift them up, and that's what this is saying in that interpretation, that it's not just not charging interest to a Jew, but it's to somebody who's in need, you must help them.
Right.
Yeah, here's the devil in the details again, because I'm looking at Safari, and for they make a distinction in one of the commentaries where it says, if you lend money to my people, as opposed to when you lend money to my. So there's always an exception to the rule. It says, for instance, if it may happen, that means there are times when it's all right to charge interest. For example, in this commentary, if the person is known to be a welch on his loans all the time, right? So, and now that I'm reading this in the context again, it could well be that this particular mention of free lending refers directly back to the widows, orphans, and children, the people who attend to the poor, to need help in the short run and not have the greatest ability
Means.
to pay it back. So that can apply whether he's talking right then and there about just the children of Israel. My people, again, that's ambiguous this time. I didn't notice last time, because a lot of times when he says when he's talking to the Israelites, you shall be my people as an example. But as to Aviva's point, I'm not sure that's what he's saying here, as someone, because even the strangers are God's people, right? So again, it's every case, you look at it and you do what the highest noble, holy thing to do, which is to help people in immediate need. That doesn't necessarily take them off the hook to be responsible, should they have the wherewithal to be responsible. And unfortunately now, Alan, as everybody generalizes, we all do that. They take that out of context. The idea of when to charge interest and how much comes up later, doesn't it? So that may be the more general rule if we look at that. And also, ultimately, as opposed to some of the ways that the rest of the world looks at this, that you're forever indentured, or you think about, the poorhouses and all that, is that with all the other laws in place to forgive after 7 years and to forgive debts and all that, none of this is ever going to be forever, right? I mean, there is always going to be a point at which forgiveness, more broadly, forgiveness of a loan, maybe that's a good, never noticed that we use that same word to forgive a financial debt as opposed to a personal debt. So it's not as absolute as everybody makes it. And there again, it's because people generalize and then try to interpret the words to get the outcome that most serves them. And that's
Yeah,
the real
and we have
problem.
we have to remember that in many cultures, Jews were only allowed to be lenders and things like that. They weren't allowed to have certain other jobs.
They weren't
So,
allowed to own land.
right.
That's one of the reasons why they took on all the other professions.
Correct.
So I want to put one more
In
filter
modern
on.
day, I mean, one of the things that gets me, even Trump, was trying to not in the right way, but do something about it, that the interest rates that are charged. Well, some people might say, oh, the Jewish cabal that controls all the banks. So there are a lot of heads of bankers all over. This is part of the whole system that keeps the bulk of the population down. 27% interest on a revolving loan. I know an unsecured loan, yes, it's going to be a higher interest, but relative to the marketplace, these rates are just usurious. And they're just,
Yep.
it's horrendous, and this of a biblical proportion, and nobody pays attention to. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I'm sorry. I put my little rant in there.
can we incorporate the term enslavement back into here? We really can. And I think that the importance of the importance of looking at these lines in this context with this filter is God is saying, whatever you are doing to your fellow humans, others may copy. So I'm testing you to not do it to your fellow human, because that's all you've got right now, right? It's a very important, it's the idea of the covenant with all the laws, because we only get referred to this entirety, this whole Torah, this whole whatever it is. It's a wholeness. It's not a pick and choose. There's a wholeness, and the being right in your own house, that's kind of where it starts. But it comes, I want to say that these lines come directly after Veger lo tone oto. You shall not wrong nor oppress a stranger. Okay, so let's keep that in context, because what else does the word ger mean other than stranger? Anybody? That root word.
Convert.
Exactly. Okay. So what does anything, like when you say that, and we're talking about the stranger, not oppressing the stranger, remembering that you were once a stranger, how has that concept of ger also being this same use of the word for convert, how does that fit into it? There's no right answer. There's no answer. I just wonder what it means to other people when they hear it, because it irks me.
Well, what's the question again?
How does when we look at the word ger and how it is, we are instructed to never forget that we were once strangers. It's a whole relationship. Is we were once strangers. There will always be strangers among you. Therefore, 613
Well,
or
I mean,
whatever.
I think that the Torah is very clear that a convert is very precious to Hashem, and that's directly in the Torah. And then when we look at some of the great sages were converts, we look at King David, whose great grandmother was Ruth, a convert, and so it's taking in a stranger, a baby, a new Jewish baby, let's put it that way. And Hashem is saying, it's precious to me, because a convert has to go, you're not brought up in it. You have to go a long way to find it, and it has to be in your heart and in your soul. And not only that, but when you're a when you're a convert, you take on, you take, it means you were at Sinai. It also means you take on the Holocaust. You take on the Babylonian invasion. You take on anti-Semitism. You take on, so I could go on with other things, but that's enough, I think.
Okay. Ruth Ellen, thank you. Ruth
I
Ellen?
would
You're
just say
welcome.
it bothers me because this is the frustration. Now I realize even more important how important entomologists are. That's now which one's the insects and which one's the words? Entomology is the words, right?
Oh, yeah.
Entomologist is an insect.
Etymologist, the
Etiology is
etymologist.
the one of analyzing words.
Right, the etymology. I'm Mrs. Malaprop here, because it's unfortunate that it's the same word in Hebrew. But I'm thinking the connotation of strange then doesn't mean not of the same land, but like in a way unnatural, like not what you expect, not the average, because the people who are converts came to Judaism not through the normal channel of birth, but by choice later. So it's strange in that way, but not strange in the same way we're just finding a stranger. But this is parsing the words, but yet words matter. So and then when we generalize and we have one kind of, we do this a lot when we're reading all this stuff, even the idea of the word slave, right? We've grown up with a certain connotation that's that's the most common one that we all recognize and have used during our lives. And now we come up across the use of a different connotation and it throws us. And that's where I think we sometimes come to the wrong conclusions. So that's how I would answer your question there, Viva.
Okay.
I don't think
There
it's
is, like I
apples to
said, it's not
oranges.
really a question. I'm more
I know, your
interested in if,
rhetorical question.
because in Hebrew it really stands out. The word ger, as you know, politically it has become a real political thing. First of all, not all the different branches of Judaism look at the concept of a ger as a convert in the same way. But yet there is a midrash that says that all souls who were at Sinai were Jews, and that includes the ones who converted. Their souls were there, the circumstances of their lives brought them somewhere different, right? But their souls always were there. They didn't need to be brought to Sinai, they were already there.
You just remind me, that's funny because in modern culture, there's that quote unquote sitcom, not totally, called Nobody Wants This, about a love of, love between a agnostic Gentile and a Jew. And that exact storyline comes up about everybody if you're a Jew, is because you were at Sinai, and they turned that into a plot line, which is just kind of interesting. But I mean, so in Hebrew to this day, they'll use interchangeably. There's only one word ger, like we would have stranger and convert in English. There isn't any other synonym or any that might differentiate those two uses of the word ger?
I, I don't know language
All right,
well
I
enough to
don't
tell
want,
you,
I mean,
but I
because
will
these
tell
are the
you
kind of things that get us in trouble.
that from that root, there are a number of things very important in Judaism that come from that root. So the name Hagar, you know, the one who bore the first son to Abraham. That is not a mistake that word comes from the same root as stranger, right? And there's a lot of wonderful midrashim about that. The to me, the overlying principle is that when you look at a human, they're human. Everything else recedes. That is to me the constant reminder. These laws are chewy. They have to do with, monetary compensation. They have to do with lots of things. They do have to do with justice, but they always go back to saying, you're human. You have to figure this out. If your dog got out once and bit someone, then be more attentive to your dog, right? Or whatever. The responsibility always goes back to the human, but the responsibility of always looking at all humans as equally human, that is something that God is trying to imbue. That was a God quality. How does this become a human quality? How do you translate that from something that only God understands to something that humans understand? It's a work in progress. We certainly haven't gotten there by any stretch of the imagination.
You just made me think of something else, and it plays into Yehuda's idea of opportunity cost as an economist. If we should ultimately, our goal should be getting back that humanity is humanity and we're all human and we shouldn't make these distinctions. And yet in practicality, one could say, for example, you could use the idea of charity begins in the home, or you start with what you know. So you're more likely to help protect the weak among your own tribe before you help the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that you can't help the rest of the world and that there can't be forgiveness of other loans. And ultimately, in some ways, all the rules about Jubilee and letting people go applies to everyone. So that kind of takes care of that. So it's kind of creating a practical hierarchy in terms of, well, I don't know what to do. There are all these problems. I don't know what to do. Well, we'll start here, So maybe that's one way to think about it. But ultimately, because we're not at the Garden of Eden and we have to live by the sweat of our brow, we do have to worry about our economic stability. And at some point, it might be that we have resources that we have available to lend, but we can't do it for free. So we're balancing these different things, but none of them are absolutely forbidden or absolutely required in a way, right? But when we reach that utopia of the ideal, then those distinctions should disappear, right? Hopefully, that gives a little comfort, a little comfort to the idea that we can make exceptions for our own group somehow first.
If anyone's invested in doing all the reading, like has always been our tradition, we should kind of push on a little bit. Because there's one more, the Naaseh V'Nishma part we have to get to. How about, who wants to read? Craig, you want to read a little bit?
I will.
Okay.
You shall not bear a false rumor. You shall not put your hand with the guilty to be a harmful witness. You shall not follow the many for evil, and you shall not bear witness in a dispute to go askew, to skew it in support of the many. Nor a poor man shall you favor in his dispute. Should you encounter your enemy's ox or his donkey straying, you must surely return it to him. Should you see your adversary's donkey sprawling under its load and would hold back from assisting him, you shall surely assist him. You shall not skew the case of your indigent in his dispute. From a lying word stay far away, and the guiltless and innocent do not kill, for I will not acquit the guilty. No bribe shall you take, for a bribe blinds the sighted and perverts the words of the innocent. No sojourner shall you oppress, for you know the sojourner's heart, since you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. And 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its produce. But in the seventh you shall let it go and let it lie fallow, and your people's indigent may eat of it, and what is left the beast of the field will eat. Thus shall you do for your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days shall you do your deeds, and on the seventh day you shall cease, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and your bondman and the sojourner catch their breath. And in all that I have said to you, you shall watch yourselves. In the name of other gods you shall not invoke, nor shall it be heard on your lips. 3 times in the year shall you hold me a festival. The festival of matzah you shall keep 7 days. You shall eat matzah as I have charged you at the fixed time of the month of the new grain, for in it you came out of Egypt, and they shall not appear in my presence empty-handed. And the festival of the harvest, first fruits of your labor that you sow in the field, and the festival of ingathering as the year goes out, when you gather in your labor from the field. 3 times in the year all your males shall appear in the presence of the Master, the Lord. You shall not offer up the blood of my sacrifice with leavened stuff, nor shall the fat of my festival offering be left till the morning. The best of the first fruit of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Look, I'm about to send a messenger before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I made ready. Watch yourself with him and heed his voice. Do not defy him, for he will not pardon your trespass, for my name is within him. But if you truly heed his voice and do all that I speak, I shall be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes. For my messenger will go before you, and will bring you to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Canaanite, the Hivite and the Jebusite, and I shall obliterate them. You shall not bow to their gods, and you shall not worship them, and you shall not do as they do, but you shall utterly tear them down, and you shall utterly smash their pillars. For my messenger will go before you and will bring you to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Canaanite, the Hivite and the Jebusite, and I shall obliterate them. There shall be no woman miscarrying or barren in your land. The count of your days I will fill. My terror I shall send before you, and I shall panic the whole people among whom you will come, and I shall make all your enemies turn tail to you. And I shall send a hornet before you, and it will drive out the Hivite and the Canaanite and the Hittite before you. I shall not drive them out before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field multiply against you. Little by little shall I drive them out before you until you are fruitful and inherit the land. And I shall fix its borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I shall give into your hand the inhabitants of the land, and you will drive them out before you. You shall not make a pact with them or with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to offend me. For should you worship their gods, it will be a snare for you.
Okay, we're going to stop. Words we wish we didn't have to read year after year, because how easy they are to read simply. But I do want to leave some time. The very last few lines that we're going to read, the chapter 24, have the other more significant concept that I wanted to give time to. So let's massacre this one.
Okay, well, help me out because, again, it's new to me, not new to you. And that last part seemed to say, what are you doing with mosques in Israel and people of a different faith and Christians too? So how do you address that or nuance that?
I find myself speechless in light of reading these words year after year.
Well, I mean, if you're Orthodox, you don't. Well,
It's
I
not
mean,
just
the
Orthodox. If you're
Oh, okay,
nationalist,
I
you
don't know,
don't.
but you know more about that than I do because, you're Israeli, but I just know that when I listen to certain Orthodox from Israel that I've seen on YouTube and other channels, they say that, when Mashiach comes, that mosque is going to be destroyed and that temple is going to be built on top of it. And, it will be a completely Jewish nation and there won't be, Christianity and all of these other things there. So, yeah,
Who's doing the destroying?
you
Because
got me. I have no idea.
well,
I
because it's
mean,
people doing the smashing of the mosques.
yeah, sure. I
Is
guess
that
so. Yeah.
right? Is that what we're reading? So it's not that there's we have to take a big arc to get to sort of the end of the story. What's the purpose of all of this? What's the purpose of all of this leading to, and don't forget that Moses gets to check out gracefully, by the grace of God, he gets to check out and not actually see how the people put the manual aside when they cross the river. Because these words have been used to justify not only what the Israelites or the Israelis, because now we can bring that into the conversation because we're saying that, what they have done, what they have used to justify actual acts, because there is actual mosque smashing. It's
Right.
happening by people, by the hand of people, okay? And who else uses this term from the river to the sea? Who else uses these plain words to justify?
Who else besides non-Jews?
Well, we have here, let me just
Like,
read
I
these.
mean, the
And I
Palestinians.
will drive,
The pro-Palestinians use it.
right. I
Right,
will
right.
drive them out before you in a single year, lest the land become desolate. I will not drive them. Oh no, I want the next line. I will
Well,
drive
not
them out before you, little by little,
little by
until
little.
until you have increased and possessed the land. I will
Right,
set borders from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistia, whatever, Palestine in modern words, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you will
right,
drive them out before you. How do we
right.
not how do we read this in any way that doesn't just look at the simplicity of the words? It's
It's a theocracy.
But it's also talking about an ancient peoples who aren't there anymore, and to conflate them with the people who are there now is that I don't know how you can make that leap. And I think that using these passages as a justification for some of the actions that have been taken or condoned or accepted, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem to hold up because there are no Hivites, there are no Jebusites,
that's right.
they don't exist anymore. This is
But
And do they not
something that
exist?
happened in.
Do they not exist because of the might of humans? Is that why they don't exist? That's the real crux here. Is God saying go out and kill everybody in your way?
that's what they believe. They take it word for word. The Torah can't be changed. It's as good now as it was back then at Sinai when it was given. Only the rabbis can interpret it for you, that kind of thing. So, I mean, Alan, you know, people take it literally,
Oh, I
com-
understand
com-
what you're saying, and I agree.
completely literally.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree that that's what's being done. But I'm saying I don't think that
Yeah.
it's correct to use these passages as justification
Well,
because we're.
we've seen Jews live side by side with Muslims and Arabs in other countries peacefully for years.
I mean,
However, it usually comes back on us. So there's that.
So what if we put another filter onto this? Because first of all, how this particular the reason I stopped this before we got into chapter 24, it says, "You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not remain in your land. Why? Lest they cause you to sin against me, for you will serve their gods, and it will prove a snare to you.
There you
So
go.
what, right, but what if instead people did not blame other people for not listening to the covenant? That's the crux. That's the turn. That's, to me, this is what it turns on. It says, you might be tempted by their gods. You might be tempted to take the easy way out and read these words in their overtly simplistic um, tone. But what will that lead to? Because we know already, it will lead to forever war. So what
Yeah.
God is saying is not go and kill these people. It's saying, I will clear the land of these people whose beliefs you might emulate, because on the surface they seem easier than what I am now tasking you to do with this covenant. That's how I have to read it.
But
That's
even when
personal.
Jews have minded their own business, they've still been attacked by other people. So there's that too. I'm just saying there is that.
Did Jews
And, you
ever get
know,
to mind their own business?
I'm just saying, like, if you make nice to the Palestinians, or the Syrians or some other people, what's, are you going to be attacked again? Are you in down the road?
Are you
You
ever,
know,
sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. Are you ever not going to get attacked if you clear the land of the people who are your enemies? Does that guarantee you any safety? I think history has
I
proven
guess
not.
we're screwed. I guess we're screwed either way.
No, it's not about that. Look, I'm gonna be quiet. I want to hear Yehuda and Craig. So, Yehuda, then Craig.
Let's just do the numbers thing again. There's this is represented in this writing, but the way you treat the stranger is represented many, 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 many more times. And that's, we do the numbers thing. The most important stuff is the stuff that's repeated over and over again.
I agree with you.
Okay,
Maybe
Craig.
that's it.
Craig, go ahead.
I took one trip to Israel and I was doing a Colorado radio show. So it was interesting because I was broadcasting from the Jerusalem Post building from like midnight to 4 a.m. And then they had me out and about and meeting a lot of important people. And it was after a war with Hezbollah and Hamas, not as big as obviously now, but I said to the general, hey, you're not fighting Yasser Arafat anymore. You've got Hamas, which is a form of Islamic radicalism, and Hezbollah, the party of God. So now you have these religious adversaries who have it pretty much as part of their imperative to follow the example of Muhammad, who chopped off the heads of Jews at the Battle of Qurayza in Medina. And what are you going to do about that? Why don't you call it out for what it is? He said, because religious wars last 100 years and everybody gets killed, which was
They're the worst. Yeah.
yeah. So it kind of echoes what Aviva said, but that general said it to me. But still, if it doesn't change the fact that a radical Islam and maybe even radical Judaism are bound to clash with each other.
Or radical Christianity. You have the Crusades.
Yes.
But here, this is way historically, way before any of that. Historically, we like to think of the the Torah being written in such a way that it's all about the Israelites, but it's not. This parasha, in very, very many ways, reminds us of that. And I think that you know, we don't get to pick and choose only the lines we like to justify things that we do. We don't get that. I mean, you
I
know,
was just told by somebody who lives down south, which you guys also did for a long time, that this United States is a Christian nation.
My whole life I've been told that.
And this administration has publicly endorsed that at the prayer breakfast last week. Yeah.
Jesus may beg to differ.
Well, it doesn't matter because they don't follow Jesus, obviously.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So,
follow the church of hate and separation.
yeah. So, I mean, to many, many people, this is a Christian country, and everybody else who has dark skin or isn't a Christian is an outsider, period. And not going to take the country away from the whites.
Of course, it does not say that anywhere in the Declaration of Independence or in the Constitution or in the Federalist Papers
Or in the Torah.
or in the Torah.
Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. It's I hate to leave on a downer, but you know, I'm a realist to some degree, and yeah. Anyway, Debbie
Okay,
Downer over
so
here.
now I stop there because I can't resolve this, right? Every year I do
No
one.
one
But
can.
let's
Yeah.
read the last, and let's see, who hasn't read yet? Vic has disappeared off the screen. I'm gonna
Vic or
say,
Ellen?
yeah,
I
I would
guess I
say you,
can.
but I know it's really hard for you to read, so I'm
There's
gonna
Vic.
ask Alan to
Oh,
read.
there's Vic. Vic just arrived.
Aha.
Just in time.
It's in
Hey,
time.
Vic.
Perfect
Yes.
timing. You're,
And to Moses he had said, "Go up to the Lord, and you and Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You shall bow down from afar. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but they shall not come near, and the people shall not go up with him." And Moses came and recounted to the people all the Lord's words and all the laws, and the people answered with a single voice and said, "All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do." And Moses wrote down all the Lord's words, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent the lads of the Israelites, and they offered up burnt offerings and sacrifices and communion sacrifices, bulls to the Lord. And Moses took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he threw on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will heed." And Moses took the blood and threw it upon the people. And he said, "Look, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has sealed you with over all these words." And Moses went up, and with him Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the God of Israel, and beneath his feet was like fashioning of sapphire pavement, and the very heavens for pureness. But against the elect of the Israelites, he did not send forth his hand. And they beheld God and ate and drank. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go up to me in the mountain and be there, that I may give you the stone tablets and the teaching and the commandments that I have written to instruct them." And Moses arose, and Joshua his attendant with him. And Moses went up the mountain of God. And to the elders he had said, "Sit here for us until we return to you. And look, Aaron and Hur with you. Whoever has matters to air may approach them." And Moses went up, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the Lord's glory abode in Mount Sinai. The cloud covered it 6 days, and on the seventh day he called out to Moses from the midst of the cloud. And the sight of the Lord's glory was like consuming fire at the mountaintop before the eyes of the Israelites. Moses entered within the cloud and went up the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
Oh, scary times. 40 days and 40 nights is a long time. So I'd like to read from this Torah Today book by Pinchas Peli, just regarding those last few paragraphs. We proceed to follow the biblical account of Revelation, detailed in a series of laws pertaining to the preservation of life and property, as well as the observance of rituals and ceremonies. Would they realize now that they must start hearing in order to understand and probe the laws and their implicit intention? Again, when the full book is presented to them, we read, "And all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that the Lord commanded, we will do." Moses will not give up, however, until he extracts from them a commitment that includes, in addition to doing, also hearing. Then at long last, they say in line 24:7, all that the Lord has spoken we will do and we will hear. Only at the conclusion of a long dramatic exchange do they now accept not only to act, but also to hear in the action, and as a result of it, not the command by a dead letter, but the word of a living God. Na'aseh v'nishma, two words that are pronounced now are not necessarily two separate things following each other as they appear in the translation, we will do and we will hear. They are one and the same thing. The phrase should then be reread, we will do and hear. Hearing as we do and doing as we hear simultaneously. If all that God wanted was blind obedience, he would have created robots, not people in whom he implanted thinking minds and sensitive hearts. So I thought that was really interesting that we will do and we will hear versus we will do and hear is just one little and taken out of there, and it changes the meaning a lot.
And the last line you read, a lot of people are predicting that we will soon be replaced by robots. I mean, you could shake your head, but AI is going to, take a lot of jobs when humans will be replaced robotically. And so what was that last line you read, that God preferred humans?
If all God wanted was blind obedience, he would have created robots, not people in whom he implanted thinking minds and sensitive hearts. So you and I had one of the most disturbing conversations on AI. Somebody that we met at this interfaith thing, and we had dinner with her, and I want to say I was very proud of myself for not outwardly showing simultaneously how not interested and freaked out I was. But there is once people acknowledge that AI will take over more than tasks and more than just the difficulty of calculating too many things all at once, and think that AI will start thinking for itself, because there is a school of thought that says that that's happening, and that's inevitably going to happen. I just do this, and I do it because I have to. Because
they say it's already happening, Aviva.
I know what they say, and I try to be good and listen and not be very closed-minded, but I, for one, refuse that. It's not that I refuse to believe that it's going to happen. I just refuse it.
Yeah. It's really disturbing a lot of people on their phones, on their iPads.
If we bring it back to Hashem, that sentence you read again, doesn't it start with if? It starts, if God.
If all that God wanted was blind obedience.
Right. So it's saying, hey, humans run the world when that was written. I don't know when that was written, but probably before the singularity and AI taking over. And they were saying, hey, humans are running the earth and they have a heart and a soul, and that's the evidence. So God could have put robots here if that's what he wanted, but maybe since the robots are coming, maybe that's what God wanted. Something more obedient, something who won't make the mistakes that humans do. Maybe he's fed up with us, and he had us create robots to replace ourselves. Just further evolution.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Look how lucky we are. We got to be human all this time. Then it's interesting. Just it's going to happen whether we put our fingers in our ears or not.
What's the it that's going to happen?
AI is going to replace a lot of traditional jobs. I was
Okay.
just contemplating that there will probably be AIs leading Torah studies, moderating them. And you'll have to figure out, well, who's AI, who's not really. But this would be one of the last. I think this is a uniquely human endeavor. But think if a moderator, and this would have to be very advanced, was smarter than you and had every inch of the Talmud and Torah in a blink of a second at their command, they could probably do a heck of a job guiding a Torah study. But then the question would be, well, tell us the biases of this robot. How are they programmed? Are they Orthodox, liberal? Were they raised in Israel like Aviva? So I just, it's going to be a brave new world. And
So when I asked you what is it that AI will do, and you started with something that's very reasonable. It's already been happening. It's been happening long before the term AI happened. Automation, the Industrial Revolution and automation, right? So that the fact that machines can do a better, cleaner job and actually spare lives, because automation has really spared a lot of injuries. That's one thing, but where do we take that leap and acknowledge that it's going to go all the way to usurping any sort of human morality? That's
because
where I want to know. That's what I want to know.
corporations looking to make a profit are in charge.
There
Take
you go.
law firms can
That's right.
now use a laptop to replace lawyers with AI and generate brilliant work. So lawyers are on the chopping line. I think trial attorneys, kind of like a Torah study, it's a uniquely human endeavor. But somebody's already mentioned earlier in this study that I don't think our jury system is long for the world. One, Trump hates it because they convicted him, and two, it's not a perfect system, and maybe AI will get it better. I don't think so, but there may be data and tests, and we all know that humans are fallible, and the argument will be made that we can do better with AI, come to more just and fast results.
So I'll tell you something interesting that happened to me, and it'll sound like I'm going off the subject, but let's see if we can relate it. So I sat through 2 days of jury selection, 2 very long days. There were 200 and something people. In the end, I wasn't even selected for I wasn't selected at all. But the thing that happened to me sitting there for 2 days is, they had to describe the crime. Of course, the person accused was sitting there with his lawyer, and we saw him on video, and we were all in one big, huge room, 250 people. And you know what happened to me looking at this whole process? I looked at that young man and I thought, nobody has ever treated him with respect. This is the first time, probably in his young life, that anybody has treated him with respect.
You mean the defendant? Right.
He was being addressed very respectfully by the judge. In every way, I'll just leave it at that. In my opinion, I could see that this may have been the first time he was treated with respect at all. Also, may have been the first time he had to practice treating people with respect.
Well, you're making a lot of assumptions there.
I'm saying me.
I'm
Me.
just,
This is
I'm
what
just
happened to
saying
me.
that you just look at how juries are selected, and I've selected so many, but I'm trying to sell my case, sell myself, and find good customers for what I'm selling. And it's because I'm trying to win. And is that fair? If I'm more talented in jury selection than my opponent, is that really fair to the defendant when I was prosecutor? Do you see what I'm saying? It's we want things to be fair, but we all know there's a wide disparity in the talent of attorneys or resources. So that's where I say argument will be made that AI can do it better. And I just see it's going to be happening. Aren't there the government's using AI left and right, and I don't like it either, but we have to face up to this reality. And just when you mentioned robots in that commentary, it's interesting.
And that
Craig,
commentary
can
was
I ask a
written.
question?
Sure.
Do you think that people will rise up against AI, the use of AI?
Well,
I mean,
how do we rise up? And
I mean, I don't know, protesting, not buying things, you know, I don't know.
I know,
But
yeah, Scott Galloway, who's half Jewish and identifies as Jewish. I should not say half Jewish. He's a popular podcaster,
mm,
and he's leading a big charge for people to cancel their subscriptions to Amazon, Apple.
mm,
But
mm,
I don't know.
if that's going to work, yeah.
Well, it might a little bit, but and now Trump, yeah, it's we're getting pretty far afield, and Alan's probably still recording. So,
But no, we are reading this in our time, and the idea of, where what we are willing to accept as humans, because we are humans. We will always be humans. We'll be dead one day too. But we hope that our children will remain human, and we hope that their children will remain human. And I feel like we have a pretty good instruction manual only if we use it, and we don't. That's the thing.
right.
Look at the facility with which we pick and choose lines, and we say, there it is. There's a justification. There's a justification for whatever. Gaza. There's a justification for anything, for the West Bank. It is not, we're not afforded that. We're not afforded that simplicity. So AI may feel like the biggest cop out. Well, AI deemed it so. AI decided this person is guilty of a crime. AI will also deem what an eye for an eye means. What's the actual cost of this person at this age losing their eyesight, blah, 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 and what economic loss of opportunity it is for how many generations. AI can do that much better than us sitting here debating these things.
Right, but it's going to be programmed by somebody. There are so many warnings from people working on AI, and the most alarming situation is its desire to maintain itself and will blackmail somebody in the business about an affair to keep them from shutting off the AI. They scheme like humans. And right. And so that's the crazy thing, especially in the context of that quote. You envision a robot being dispassionate, but they're not. They're scheming for their own survival, and they're more than willing to do whatever to a human being to maintain its own existence.
I'm going to say we're moving far enough away from the Torah, so I'm going to end the live stream here and let this discussion keep on going.
A lot of people on there saying, "What? It's just getting good right
study.
now."
Good study. Yeah. Well, the machine is making me do it. So
yeah.